Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
The UK's pubs crisis explained.
If you live in the UK,
I didn't know UK had a pub crisis, but what can be the crisis? People don't go to pubs because they can't afford it, maybe?
you'll know that sadly, you don't have to walk very far to come across a boarded up pub. In the past few years following the COVID-19 pandemic, the rate of pub closures has accelerated, driven by the cost of living crisis, higher rents, and a slowdown in socializing. In fact, at the end of
Well, particularly pub, I guess is unique to the UK, but I think going out, like not crisis, but restaurant shutting down, it's been happening here too. A lot of people just can't afford to go eat out. It's just expensive.
2024, the total number of pubs across England and Wales had fallen below 39,000 for the first time since records began, with at least 34 pubs shutting every month in 2024 on average.
the restaurant business is already very competitive. Like you have like a 50% chance just to break even on your first year. So I can imagine like with another like hard times slap on top of that how businesses are able to stay afloat.
Yeah. Where you pull that 50% from?
I always hear that every time someone starts a restaurant business, they say restaurant business is very competitive. They say you have
Competitive, yeah, but that's particularly that in the first year you
to
have
break
50%
even,
to be
to break even, to only
where you
break
heard that
even.
from?
I heard it on the Housewives. With the Housewives, her husband, they were opening up an Aussie restaurant in the States, and U.S. people, we don't have too many stores that have like the Aussie foods, so they were selling like kangaroo, like food.
Is that legal?
I think so. It's exotic meats to eat, and they were complaining to say, well, there's 50% chance. So I just took this statistic. So
Okay.
I'm not sure, but
No, I never heard it. That's why I'm asking. Okay.
More than one per day. Already in the first 3 months of 2025, according to the Campaign for Real Ale, 303 pubs across England, Scotland, and Wales have shut, with this number expected to rise further due to changes to the government's budget effective from April. It's not just pubs either. Brewers, cafes, local nightclubs, and restaurants are all suffering from the crisis facing the UK's hospitality industry. So, in this video, we'll take a look at the UK's pubs crisis, why it's getting worse, and whether they can be saved. Failures of this new Labour government. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast's YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. First, though, let's start with some historical context. Pubs have existed in the UK for hundreds of years, since at least the 17th century, when so-called coaching inns acted.
So I looked up, they say many restaurants failed due to a combination of financial issues, poor management, and failure to understand the market, specifically high operating costs, insufficient capital, and poor location choices and inadequate marketing strategies. And then there's a formula for the break-even point and how much it takes for a business to break even. It's quite high. What I see so far, there's a lot of calculations. It takes a lot to break even.
Providing food, drink, and accommodation. Then, in 1830, the Beer House Act, which was repealed in 1993, made beer cheaper and more accessible, effectively allowing anyone with a dwelling to sell alcohol as long as they paid an annual license. This resulted in tens of thousands of new establishments, particularly in the rapidly industrialising north of England, with many pubs choosing to honour William IV, the governing monarch at the time, in their name. For the past 200 or so years, pubs have been a central part of British culture,
But they're not
representing the history
they're
and
not, like,
identity of
together.
local
They're
villages,
like different. Wow, that's so
Just the same
interesting.
name after the king.
towns, and cities. British pubs are renowned across the world for their iconic naming practices, their painted signs, often featuring heraldic imagery like coats of arms, and also their cosy interiors, including wood panelling, timber ceilings, leather sofas with brass details, bar stools, and various historical maps, sketches, and photos of the local area often adorning the walls. However, in recent decades, a pubs crisis has emerged. According to a 2014 report by the Institute of Economic Affairs, in 1969 there were approximately 75,000 pubs in the UK, but by 1980 this had fallen to 69,000, by 2003 to under 60,000, and by 2013 to under 48,000.
Well, naturally, it was on the
As we mentioned earlier, today in England and
Yeah, I don't know if you can consider this a crisis. If
maybe it's just out of style. Like
I guess
maybe people going to a pub, because how I would think of a pub is like associated with sporting events. So I would think there is now an elevated, more newer way that people host events than going to an actual pub. Because I feel like there's pub culture.
yeah, but if it's been on the decline, it just that kind of indicates that okay, people not just that interested in going to pubs as they used to. It just means that the culture is shifting. So the fact that okay, it has declined in the recent years, it's just it's following the trend. I don't see like a steeper decline that.
I would have thought the dip from 2019 to 2024 would be a little bit more
Yeah, because the decline is like on par with
the rate.
the rate. So I don't know. I think we're exaggerating a little bit.
In Wales, that number sits below 39,000 and will likely continue falling. Pubs have largely suffered because of competition from supermarkets, which can sell alcohol much more cheaply than pubs because they can squeeze brewers' margins and also sell alcohol at a loss to attract customers. In fact, while the price of beer at a pub or bar has risen significantly faster than inflation in recent decades, the price of beer off sales, i.e. from supermarkets and off licenses, has risen more slowly
Pubs,
than
it's
inflation.
more about the experience in the actual beer itself.
Yeah.
So I would think that, maybe the ones that are going out of business are just the ones that people don't typically want to go frequent at. They want to go to the more iconic, the ones that are like established their brand and is the one to go and frequent at.
Yeah, I feel like you go to a pub, a bar, a restaurant, you don't go for the price because it's cheap. You go for the experience. So the fact that the alcohol is cheaper in those places is kind of expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has caused pint prices to soar. In 1987, the average pint at a UK pub cost just 92p, but by 2024, it had surged to a national average of £4.79. It's even higher in the capital at £5.59, apparently, although as a London-based office, we're pretty sure it's higher than this. Anyway, this has all contributed to fewer people being able to afford a pub trip, and fewer customers increases financial pressure on pubs. The pubs crisis was also exacerbated by the pandemic. Pubs were forced to close for months under strict social distancing rules, with some failing to reopen at all. While some pubs managed to get around the rules by serving a substantial meal with their alcohol, even if that was just a Scotch egg, social trends changed as people got used to staying at home and not going out to socialise at the pub. Then in 2022,
So restaurants could still be open, but not like the pubs that only solely serving alcohol.
like it
That's
maybe,
so
yeah.
interesting.
energy costs and inflation soared after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, already struggling pubs were further hit, and fewer people could afford paying for a pint, leading to hundreds of pubs closing permanently. This trend
What's
continued.
interesting? I feel like during COVID times, it turned everyone into a drinker because you're at home. There's nothing really much to drink. So I would think like old habits wouldn't die so fast that once everything opened up, people would naturally want to go have a drink at a pub, but they didn't.
Throughout 2023 and 2024. In February this year, businessman Sacha Lord, Greater Manchester's former nighttime economy advisor who originally endorsed Labour's campaign, wrote a letter to UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves, arguing that he was reconsidering his position as the hospitality sector faces, quote, irreversible damage. He also claimed the government's 2025 to 26 budget will cripple businesses across the sector, and that its new tax implications will push many small and independent operators to breaking point. A quick online search shows a series of recent local newspaper stories about pub closures, with publicans increasingly concerned about rising costs, including higher employer national insurance contributions and a rise in the national minimum wage. As a result, some pubs are closing early, while others are closing down. So the big question is this a death sentence for British pubs, or can they be saved?
I guess they don't want to get rid of UK
Culture.
pubs,
Yeah, 'cause
culture,
it's a
period.
cultural thing.
Yeah. So I think that there will be some remaining, but not as much as they once were
Yeah.
before.
Because I don't think they can be saved, especially if they say since COVID, people's habits have changed. And we kind of been seeing throughout the decades, the graph, the habits have been changing. People go out to pubs less. That's what it is.
I think it's gonna turn into more of like a novelty thing.
Yeah,
Like
I
for
think
example, like how we used to have people riding horse carriages all the time until they had like the automobile, and now when everyone's able to ride the automobile, we have fewer and fewer less horse carriages and their riders, so it became like a specific thing that, oh, this is what the tourists can do, not the person really day to day would utilize.
Well, one thing that could potentially help is the UK government's planned reforms to the business rate system, which we'll come back to in a moment. But right now, pubs are facing a significant decline in financial support from the government, with Reeves having cut the rate of business relief for the hospitality sector from 75% to 40% in the 2025-26 budget. This means that, as of the 1st of April, retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, like pubs, in properties with a rateable value, i.e. an estimated worth, of under £500,000, can get 40%, rather than the previous 75%, off their business rates bills for the 2025-26 tax year, up to a £110,000 cap. However, the government says this is a temporary measure until 2026 to 27, when they plan to permanently lower tax rates for hospitality properties. This will likely be funded by a higher multiplier on businesses worth over £500,000, including most large infrastructure businesses and warehouses, like those used by online distributors, in line with Labour's manifesto pledge to support the high street. For context, their 2024 election manifesto said that the current business rate system places an undue burden on our high streets and contains a pledge to reform it
I wonder what is this system. 'Cause is this taxes? I don't really know what this is.
to level
To
the
me,
playing
it seems like they don't necessarily want to promote drinking anymore because it's not like a habit they want for their people to have, so they make it quite costly.
But it's not just about drinking. Though. Why do you say drinking?
Because in the pub you go to drink.
And yeah, but this is applies not just pub, applies to all the hospitality, so like
Oh, I
hotels.
thought pubs.
field between the high street and online giants, better incentivize investment, tackle empty properties, and support entrepreneurship. This would hopefully mean lower tax rates for pubs, supported by higher rates on big online warehouses, although it could also affect big anchor tenant businesses worth over £500,000 in town centres, like bigger pubs or those in highly valued historical buildings. But it's unclear whether these future changes to the UK's business rate system will come quick enough to save
This is basically for small businesses versus big businesses, the divide.
local pubs. There are other societal trends, including young people going out less, a fall in alcohol consumption, rapid urbanisation, and a shift towards non-alcohol based activities, plus people generally spending more time alone and online, which are also putting community strongholds like pubs at risk of closure. So if we want to save them, it might take more than just the government. If you can, maybe consider spending a bit of time in your local this Easter weekend and help preserve an important part of the community, at least for a bit longer. Regardless,
Yeah. Well,
in
enjoy that.
2025, one thing is certain. We can
Yeah. Yeah. Seems people's habits are changing. That's the.
Yeah.
I honestly would think that's the biggest thing. Inflation, of course, less money, but the habits are. I don't think things are going back to how they used to be.
Can I see the comments? Maybe what the pubs can do is offer like other services.
Most British political problem ever. A pub in my city had a genius idea. They refused to be bought out by apartment builders who wanted to knock down, but they agreed to a deal where they would renovate and build a block of flats, with the ground floor being the pub, and the pub would own the land and receive rents from the apartments managing company. They were able to drop prices, and the pub continues. Okay, that's interesting.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible.